my name is Dr. Evan Dernan. I'm an owner and chiropractor at Peak Health and Performance. We're an injury and sports rehab clinic on Elbow Drive in South Calgary.
I'm Curtis Loughran. I own CrossFit Above All. We're located on 42nd Avenue Southeast, Calgary. What we're talking about today is the Big Three, which is essentially 3 core stability movements taught by Dr. Evan Dernan. So how about you show me what these are all about?
Absolutely. So the Big Three are 3 of the most highly researched exercises in core stability or in spinal rehabilitation. Developed by Dr. Stu McGill from University of Waterloo. What we're going to do today is talk about the beginner progression of the Big Three, and then in the next video we're actually going to talk about how to advance them into something a little bit more elite for your elite athlete. So I'm going to get Coach Curtis down on the ground here. We're going to start with the bird dog, or sometimes known as the cross crawl in certain communities. So let's get first started with our starting position. So I'm going to have Curtis tilt his pelvis back a little bit more and just create a flat platform on his back. Now we don't start this exercise until we have a nice solid base. We have his knees underneath his hips, and we have his hands underneath his elbows, underneath his shoulder, and everything is nice and strong and stable. So from here, the cue that you want to use is reach towards the front wall and reach towards the back wall. We don't want to focus on raising because that's going to create torque through his spine. So we want him to, again, reach his front arm towards the front wall. Don't focus on how high the hand is. I don't usually push that too much on my patients. I usually just like to see a nice solid contraction through the spine. Now, if I were to put this dowel on his spine, we would see it touching his glutes, touching his mid-back, and coming up and just about touching the base of his cervical spine. And we wouldn't see the spine S-ing at all through that dowel. We would be able to leave it there while he brings his arm back down towards the floor. And then what he's going to do is raise his opposite arm and opposite leg and reach towards the front and back wall. How does that feel?
When you do that movement right, it's a lot different than just raising both the limbs up. Reaching makes all the difference in that movement.
Absolutely. So when he's reaching towards the front wall and reaching towards the back wall, we're going to have him hold those positions for about 5 to 8 seconds, and usually we do about 10 to 12 per side each time we do it.
Excellent.
Let's progress on to the next one, which is the side bridge or the side plank. So I'm going to get Curtis on his side facing the camera here. His elbow is going to be underneath his shoulder. His front leg is going to be in front of his back leg. And we're actually going to have him rest right down to the ground. And we're going to start with our starting position. So from here, you can see that his body's not in line. So that's fine when you're starting on the ground, but when you're in the actual contraction or performing the exercise, I want him to bring his hips forward, which is then going to raise them up off the ground. His top shoulder is keeping himself nice and stable. His entire core is activated all the way around. And again, he's going to hold this exercise until he starts to feel a little bit shaky or until he feels his core fall out of that neutral position. And usually we do this exercise for time, somewhere between 30 to 40 seconds, and we'll perform about 3 reps of this exercise. Good.
Taking your hips forward on that motion makes all the difference for how much core stability you actually get. Often when people are doing that, you got their bum sticking backwards. It's not at all the same movement as when that hip comes in alignment with the entire body. You create that nice straight line.
Absolutely. So now we focused on the side of his body, or working more of the QLs, the internal and external obliques, some of the muscles that create rigidity along the side of the core. We focused on the back of the core, or more of the intrinsic, extrinsic muscles of the spine to create stability. Now we want to focus on the front of his core, or more of the rectus abdominis. So let's have him on his back. Now the starting position for the curl up, which is not by any means a sit-up, is one leg completely straight on the ground, one knee up. It doesn't really matter which knee. What this is going to do is set his pelvic tilt in the right position. Now to give him a little bit of further feedback on where his low back is, he's going to make his fingertips touch and put them underneath the apex of his lumbar spine. So above his glutes, below his mid-back. Now he can feel some pressure into those fingers. What this creates is 5 points in his upper body. We have his nose, we have the tip of each shoulder, and the tip of each elbow. Now, if each of those tips had a string attached to it, in order to perform this exercise properly, we'd be pulling equal tension through all of those strings coming up towards the ceiling. He's not crunching his body towards his knees or doing more of a sit-up type of motion. We're just creating rigidity along the front of the spine. We want to feel equal pressure pushing into his hands underneath his low back and pull him towards the ceiling, bracing and breathing, creating a nice solid contraction along the front of the core, and just like the bird dog, holding this for about 5 to 8 seconds, and performing about 10 to 12 repetitions, 3 times.
That's awesome. It really activates the core. Feel that through the entire region. That's a fantastic move.
Again, there are progressions to these exercises, so in our next video, we're going to talk about how we would maybe change these exercises just a little bit to make them really quite difficult and give them more of an elite athlete or an elite CrossFitter.
Can't wait for that.